Olivia, welcome to the Zero Signal podcast. So you are the vice president and U.S. chapter chair of the Global Council of Responsible AI. And
I'm going to jump in right there. Let's dive straight in there. What is that?
It's ethics and understanding AI and making sure everybody is on the same page with AI, not just in the US, but across the world. We're all communicating because at the end of the day, how are we going to regulate AI? We all have NIST, we have all these other standards, but we don't want, hey, we're going to drop AI, go run and go be frolic in the field and do whatever you want. We need to put some regulations around it because we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we've all seen movies and we also have robots. So how is AI going to implement with robots? How is AI going to improve our day, but also how is AI going to hurt our day and create these data breaches or help hackers in another way? But if we have these regulations set in place and we are all on the same page by communicating, saying, you know, the European Council is doing this, how can we implement that within the US chapter?
got it. All right. So you mentioned ethics. Ethics for whom? And I'm not being sarcastic here. It's like, is it the human's use of AI? Are we talking about building in like guardrails and alignment and safety concepts into the AIs themselves? Have I completely missed the point entirely? Yeah, help us explain.
I mean, you hit it the nail on the head. It's really about making sure the humans understand, because at the end of the day, it's humans who are writing the code for AI.
Right.
And who's behind the AI. And now we can't do that for, you know, the hackers and all the bad people out there, but we can do it for the people who are doing their due diligence and supporting the organization and protecting them against, you know, the bad people. It's almost like Battleship. That's really what's going to come down to is AI versus AI and, you know, who had the better, you know, strategic code behind it. And then then we can laugh and say, we sunk your battleship.
Fair enough. One of the things you and I were talking about off camera, and something that we've been talking about a lot online is like the role of the chief security officer or the CISO in this emergent world, right? So we've got all these companies that are replatforming from traditional technology. They're finding ways to bring in artificial intelligence. Like, where does AI come into our business to take over certain processes? And so we're going through this rebuild, whether that takes the form of co-pilots or agentic or yet to be told expressions of how we're going to run these businesses. I would just love to get your perspective on where does the security officer show up in this conversation, right? Because we're going far beyond just, are you free from an adversary in your environment, which has kind of been like the general remit of a security officer before. But now we have these ethics concepts we have to worry about, the responsible use of these technologies, biases in that, safety concerns, reliability as you're, you know, replatforming on these organizations. I would love to get your thought, like, how does a security officer show up here? What is the role of the executive team and the management team as we go through this rebuild?
I think we have to break down the old framework that we're used to, that's been around for about 20, 50 years, and build it back up where security is not an afterthought. It's part of the business. It's ingrained into the business. It's, you know, part of the organization from the beginning, not in the middle, not at the end. We need to be better at communicating from a security standpoint. I know security has not been the best at communicating, letting everybody know, hey, here are new policies, here are new standards, here are new things that are coming down. And you have to meet all these qualifications. And a developer is going to look at you, say, okay, that's nice.
Yeah.
Why didn't you tell me this in the beginning where I started writing the code? I think if more security is ingrained, like, you know, what our CISOs want, what our board wants, if we're telling our security team, hey, this is where you need to start from, they know it's not just a starting and that's it. It's a journey. You're going to go through the entire process from dev stage, deployment, and production. And you're going to be part of it the whole way through.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot, like security budgets, more so over the last few years, and perhaps not in response to this evolution, tech revolution, whatever we're in right now. Security budgets have been tightened over, I would say, kind of since this post-COVID boom. Do you think teams are going to be empowered to do more with potentially less headcount and using some of these new technologies? Do you think we're going to drive this by compliance, or are security organizations in of themselves going to have to grow, maybe shorter term, to kind of fight fire with fire and play battleships?
I think it's going to come, security is going to have to grow, or be the business is going to have to integrate somehow security or individuals within pieces of their organization.
Yeah.
Because without if you don't think security is part of a business model, then you're going to have issues and you're going to be behind, and you're the ones who are going to be on the news with it.
It was interesting you say that, 'cause like we had a previous guest on the podcast and we were talking about how they would, when she, in her role as the CISO, she was helping by bringing like red teaming and proactive security assessments into their agentic technologies that the customer were selling, the AI technologies that they were selling. And because they were doing that, because their customers, the very first question they were asking them was like, hey, like, how do you know this thing is not going to give away a free Ferrari when someone engaged with a chatbot, or free tickets? Like, how do we know it's going to be safe? How do we know it's going to be secure? And so it got to the point where when their CEO would sell their product, slide number one on the deck was like, here is the trust and safety. Like, this is what we're doing to proactively ensure that the AI solutions we're bringing to you as the customer have been thoughtful. And I thought that was just a good example of like one of the few examples, I might say, of where a business actually integrated the security concepts, security aspects of the security program into building that business. I hope we see more of that, because I think you're right. We're going to need to say, like, how does security not continue to operate as a separate behind the scenes operations kind of role, but really kind of integrated into what we're building day in and day out, what we're shipping to our customers.
I mean, that's really great, but I'm always going to put my other foot on the hat because, or I'm a pen tester from my background. And it was like, okay, that's great. You're doing this. How do I trust what you're doing? And how do I verify that what you're doing is accurate? Because I've actually seen where vendors will be like, no, we do pen test. And I'll be like, let me see the report.
Right. Yes.
And it is a very high level, like, here's a pen test. And all they did was like scan. They did a vulnerability scan. I'm like, that's not a pen test.
Yeah.
That is a vulnerability scan. I need to see somebody actually trying to get into your code, somebody trying to get into the background.
Right.
If you can't show me that, then you didn't really have a pen test, and that's false advertising.
Do you think adversarial testing, red teaming, those proactive assessments are going to be more deeply integrated into what I'm just largely going to call like the business product development cycle?
Yes, because if you're not testing and you don't know what's on your network, how do you verify what you're saying is accurate from a risk scorecard? You could be showing, hey, I have an A. I'm going to do the high school grading level. I have an A and we're so secure. But then in reality, you're actually a D.
Yeah.
Right.
Because, you got the teacher to forge.
Right. Exactly. And I wanted to circle back on one of Connor's favorite words in trust. As we accelerate, how do we accelerate trust whilst also moving the business? We're moving the business forward at such a rapid progression right now. I've never seen anything like it, and I'm sure others are the same. How do we continue to keep trust up whilst also you can't completely limit like ChatGPT use or any of the other models that people are using, but how do you keep trust at an all-time high?
Very, very difficult. Because people are always going to verify what you're saying is trustworthy. People are going to, look to see, okay, where's that one little thing that I can get you on? Because you could have the best software out there and you could be always right. It only takes one thing to destroy your reputation and destroy your trust with customers, with the business. Really, software, I mean, trust goes on different models. It's not just human to human. It can, software. I mean, we have trust where our computers have to trust each other.
Yeah. And are you seeing what seems like blind trust from folks when they are utilizing some of the models and some of the technologies?
Absolutely, especially with AI.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And I think what's in this particular moment that we're in, we haven't had like a big boom moment where it went like catastrophic and everyone like wakes up, goes like, shit, like this is software. Like we're still in, I think as an industry, not just as a security industry, but as a business industry, we're in that spot where we still think it's magic. And we're like, oh my goodness, I put in these I put in questions in my natural language, or I put in images and I get this wonderful thing back. It therefore must be true. And we haven't had a moment yet. I think we're going to see more of those moments come forward, and businesses are going to start to say, oh yes, we do need to be verifying things up front. We can't wait until we've rebuilt our payments processing system on top of some agentic process, then go verify it. But we need to like actually start integrating these checks up front.
Yeah, I'll tell you an interesting story. I actually did a ChatGPT. I did some research and was looking at how can we start, from a powering standpoint, how can we do it better with, AI? Because AI takes a lot of power.
It does, yeah.
And as we keep on growing, we're going to be seeing more data centers, more cloud, et cetera. And how does that affect the environment, especially with power? And I was doing my research, saw what ChatGPT did, and I talked to some industry professionals. They were like, nope, that's not true. That's totally false. And they actually gave me white papers that they wrote on the power of support for
So ChatGPT was gaslighting you on
Yes.
the usage of the technology. Yeah.
Yes.
I was like, no, I'm not harmful for the environment at all.
No, it
Yeah.
said it was. It said, I absolutely am. And this is the reason why. But the reasons were not what the industry says.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, like we just saw headlines recently this summer of Meta saying they're going to go build a data center the size of Manhattan, and like that's going to start be building out like out in like Louisiana or something. And, we also have OpenAI. They've recently penned an agreement with Oracle. It's like 30 billion a year and they only make 10 billion a year in revenue or something. And it's just like, it's shocking.
They also, and this is an old quote, but they use more power than the country of the Netherlands. So the power that's used, and we need to find a way to get more effective. I think that's something that's on a lot of the front and center of some very intelligent people's minds, but I think we do need to find a way to get more efficient with power, or we're just going to run out of usage, right? And that's going to be an interesting race, and we're already playing with a lot of trains before tracks right now, but the power race and being responsible there is going to be interesting. I wanted to go back to something that you said before we dived on, which is that we talked about hiring right now, and we talked about security teams growing. How do you see the usage of AI and agents in the hiring process right now? Because that's something that we'd talked about.
I see that it's going to go down where recruitment and people are going to be, I guess, replaced by AI, but I think it's also going to backfire because AI is just going to look for those keywords. So if I just look for keywords that AI is looking for, I can get my foot in the door with any company. You don't have that handshake. You don't have that networking where you can say, hey, do you know about Olivia Phillips? Can you tell me about her? Is she a good employee? Is she ethically sound? Is she going to help my organization grow, or is she going to hurt it? You're not going to get that information. Because AI is going to be like, she meets all the checkpoints. It's kind of like a compliance thing. And, NIST 800-53. Okay.
Yeah.
Check. All right, we're good. And I have issues with that.
There's something to be said about that because we don't, in the human relationship over time. And that's the thing that we have is we have whatever it is over time. We have tension under time. We have working with this person over time. And with that, we get to see what they look like through all 4 seasons of the year. We get to see what they look like under different circumstances. How do they perform? How do they show up? Do they show up as professionals when they don't really want to show up that day, but they grind through? When there's a crisis, how do they show up? But you're not going to get that by scraping someone's LinkedIn profile, right? You get that through time and attention with that person. So I do think it's going to be this interesting world where we're going to see more and more, maybe Connor's little prediction, in-person relationships are going to matter more as we digitize and we kind of offset, we take these processes and give them over to artificial intelligence. Human intelligence is going to become so much more important, and that human relationship and that time with that person is going to be more.
Let me ask you, do you feel that's going to be an issue because we have the new generations, they're stuck on their phones and they can't talk to anybody? I'll take my niece. Sorry, niece. I won't say your name. But she got a job, but she got fired, and she wanted to know why. She had my aunt call the office and say, hey, why did you fire my daughter? And it's like, no, you call.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she had so much anxiety trying to call. She just didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
That's why she had to get her mom. And I'm like, that's not going to work.
That's the point.
That's not going to work. Like, you have to. And she's like, well, no, texting is so much easier. Having AI do it, having, DoorDash, I don't have to talk to anybody. I don't have to do anything. And I think we're going to lose that human connection sooner or later, or we're going to have like another Y2 bug K where there's going to be no internet, no TV, no nothing. And I think that's where, human factor is going to come back into play.
No, I agree with that. I'm a very optimistic person, but like when I look around the world, I'm like get really pessimistic really quickly about some stuff. One of them is the energy consumption, like another is around human relationships. And being able to be in front of someone and have a fantastic conversation is a skill set that is built over time, right? It's built with trying to do it multiple times and then goofing up multiple times and then trying again, right? And having hard moments.
It also might end up being the last remaining skill set, right? A lot of skill sets that we have today are ones and zeros, right? They're binary. And if they're binary, by the way that we're moving forwards in an AI world, everything should be replaceable, right? Everything we think we do, if it's binary, if it's putting a presentation together, if it's our skills within Excel to look at models, if it's our way to interpret law, everything is replaceable. But human to human relationships, I mean, I don't know what the world's going to look like in 20 years, but there's a wonderful, I think Simon Sinek said it. That was a really difficult thing to say. Not one to do after a few shots of tequila. Anyway, authenticity will be the coin of the realm. And I do truly believe that as even technology practitioners that we are, start to step away from a lot of the day-to-day responsibilities, it's going to be our way that we show up. It's the way that we're trusted. It's the way that we deliver under the tough moments that I think is going to be the needle mover. And you're right, the new generation have not been brought up with that. And I think they're going to have to step away from their phones and their iPads. And I sound like such an old man even saying that. But it might be the only skill set that matters in the next few years.
Well, let me parlay that into a question I'd love your perspective on is, let's talk about the security officer today. Let's talk about the next generation of security leaders who are going to be entrusted in these new expressions of businesses. Where does that human, the authenticity, where does the human connection, how does the human being human skill sets, I don't even know what to call this thing, like show up, and like how important is that going to be? Yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
I think the human is we still need a leader. We still need someone that's going to make the hard decision. AI cannot make the hard decision. And if people are looking for AI to make those hard decisions, I feel terrified right now. But I think from that standpoint, from security leaders, it's just everybody's going to keep on looking at us saying, hey, what do I do? Is this okay? And we're going to have to make those decisions, especially when we're changing things.
So maybe there's a world here where like we're going to need, historically, security leaders have always kind of like taken a back seat. We've always had a kind of a deferential energy when we get to the boardroom. We have a deferential energy when we get to management meetings. And we're just like, well, here's my green list checklist. I did everything. My scorecard says I'm good. Please, let's fund this for the next year. And like, we have that kind of weird dynamic. But maybe now it is time to say, like, we need to be showing like the executive part of the executive role that we have, really commanding the role that we're in at the moment and showing up in those executive roles with that skill set, with that energy and with that presence to make the tough decisions and put in hard boundaries and say, nope, that's outside of our risk tolerance.
Now, I want to add to the tough decisions thing. So we're talking about a lot of businesses that are reducing headcount with use of AI. And I think we have to think about the insider threat implications. I know this is a big area of importance for you. So I'd love to hear your thoughts as we look to reduce, like what some of the insider threat challenges are as we start to remove humans and put agents in.
I think with like agents, bots, we're replacing, the tier 1 individuals. And I think we can eliminate that, not remove all the humans, because you're giving the AI full admin rights to your organization. So what's stopping that AI to recreate, and become an insider threat and start,
that's really interesting.
Giving your data? I mean, nothing is stopping it. And it just takes a tweak in code to manipulate the information so that because it already has full admin rights, it can do whatever it needs to do.
So I'm going to play this back to make sure I'm understanding. You're saying like, so there's kind of two angles to this. There's the human, like the disgruntled, overworked, burnt out people. That's going to be a classical insider risk that we have. But there's also this new idea, if you have these intelligences with these agentic processes and you give them access to data, you give them access to systems, and then you're thinking that in themselves, they're going to start taking on the same characteristics that we'd have of an insider threat.
Yeah, and well, not as like they're not going to get disgruntled, they're not going to get tired, they're going to keep on doing. It doesn't take anybody behind the code to manipulate the code to do whatever it needs to do, especially if it's a disgruntled employee. It's like, oh, you're firing me because AI took over?
Yeah.
Okay, watch this.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'll be gone for 3 months, and all of a sudden the entire organization gets compromised, and all its data gets leaked, and it's all because of...
If I could play with an imagery for a second. So if you think about like an insider threat as like, they're a human who has been compromised in some way, right? Whether it's then the disgruntledness is the payload, right? The burnt out is the payload. You can see the same thing with these agentic systems, whether it's a misaligned spec file, whether it's poorly trained, whether it's just bad prompting, or whether it's compromised. It legitimately is. I mean, we today have LLMs that people are putting into production where there are like these compromised pickle files and where like you get serialized malicious commands, so you can't read it until it's in runtime. Then you put it at the heart of your system, it's running, and now that LLM is going to execute its system code, and system code says, phone home to a threat actor, or you have data poisoning, or you have prompt injections where the threat actor stages a command, the MCP protocol reaches in, pulls in that data set, and it executes it, and then off you go. So that's actually a fascinating concept that we have to think about these agentic systems with the same risk lens that we would an insider threat.
Let me add to this.
Yeah.
Tell me one organization who knows all their assets within their.
It's a very short list. That's our answer. Yeah.
I mean, that's another thing
Yeah.
that adds to AI, because it's like that human could determine, be like, I'm looking at this and that doesn't look right. AI is going to be like, oh, it's been there since forever. It's okay, because from a behavioral analytics standpoint,
Right.
it's been there since the beginning, not realizing it's somebody shouldn't be there.
And I think as we keep going back to the role of the CISO, do you see the person responsible for that, like asset index? Does that like the role of the CISO seems like it's never going to stop, right? And salaries aren't going up, teams aren't going up in size, but there seems like a different stress every few months. Does something have to change in terms of the role? Like, do you see maybe a chief like AI information security officer? Like, how do you see this looking?
I think the CISO should be there, but I think the CISO needs to share the wealth of the burden that they have to carry for the entire organization. Chief innovation officer, getting more CISOs, others, deputy CISOs, however that structure works to support them, but also put the risk of the organization on the board members, on the organization, because a CISO is only going to be able to do what they can do at the moment and what they have in funding. But at the end of the day, they're the ones who have to go to Congress. They're the ones who have to be, go in front of people and say, you didn't do this. Why? You're in trouble. You're going to go to jail. Well, why should the CISO be the only person who's responsible? It should be the entire organization who's responsible, or the board of directors, where they're not giving enough funding to security.
I mean, it should be that the risk is with the management team and ultimately sits with the CEO of the company. And then you should have oversight of the board. I think maybe one of the contributing factors has been that a lot of CISOs have stepped into their job without understanding the role of what it means to be an executive leader in a company. And they think their job is to fix it. And it's like, that is not your job. Your job is not to fix the problem. Your job is to help understand the risk. You've talked a lot about like presenting that risk in financial terms. So the business is understanding, what am I, is the investment worth it, and getting into the details that are behind that. But then if one has done that properly, then when they do get called into question, you're like, cool, well, I'm happy to stand behind my work because I understood the risks were, I calculated them in an agreed upon way repeatedly. We framed it in the right way. The management team was aware. There was reporting going up to the audit committees and such. That's where a security leader wants to be on a bad day. Where I think we get ourselves twisted up is when we say, no, my job is to fix this and prevent the bad thing from happening. That was never possible, and it never will be possible to prevent the bad thing happening. And it's only going to get probably more challenging for people who have that frame of that mindset as we rebuild as we bring in all the AIs and all these replatformings.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think there's going to be a huge shift for how people are seeing CISOs, how people are seeing the board, how people are seeing security as a whole, with the integration of AI.
Do you think that the CISO role changes? Like, we just have more responsibility on our plate? Or do you think or do you mention like sharing the wealth of the risk, the burden of the risk here? Do you think that like these concepts, there's just too much happening here where it really does become the working group or the Security Council or the AI Governance Council, and that's the answer we go to? I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
I think it's going to be, I think a council where you're going to have the melding of the minds, instead of, one person, it's going to be multiple people sharing the load. But you're also going to get different, views on the problem at hand. Somebody could say, it could be, hey, I think it's option A, when someone's like, hey, have we ever thought about option D? And here's why.
Yeah. I think what is going to be interesting is, as we started the podcast on the chapter of the Global Council for Responsible AI, do you think that policy and frameworks are coming, and do you think that will then change the role? Because I think personally it will take legislation to then change these things rather than just hang it all on the CISO's hook. Do you think policy will be here soon,
like a Sarbanes-Oxley for AI type of thing?
Yeah, I think the policy is here already. It's just a matter of how to frame it, because we don't want to be a compliance check mark. We actually want people to start thinking about it, where it's like, oh, I did my compliance, I'm good for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
This is not PCI DSS, 4.0. I think that's the new one. But we got to think beyond that. No, don't just be like, oh, I just hit this box. What else in this box can I improve?
Yeah. And I think like we have that balance, right? And we can't stifle innovation here because as security leaders, we're going to get beat, right? Like if we're at the other end of this where it's like, hey, let's drop the brakes on everything. And then our adversaries are full gas, have the best weapons in the world and we're sat going through paperwork, it's going to be a problem. But I do think regulation will drive best patterns and behaviors, but it will likely drive some much needed hiring and firepower for the CISO org, which I think is going to be, otherwise, I mean, I've started to see it and I don't know if this is something that you've been watching, but some of the best security minds, they're either like, to heck with this, and they're going to either starting their own companies, which is very interesting and getting on the other side of the fence, or they're stepping away from the CISO role because the pressure is going up and it's going up every week, but they're not being given the help. So I do think regulation will drive that. As we look at our current security teams and the security in the IT landscape, what do you think is a good strategy for upskilling the teams that you have today?
That's a pretty good.
I think it's you have to think of it from a business strategy, not from so much a security strategy. Yes, we want security part of the business, but I think it needs to be all ingrained where it's, okay, is this the right decision for if we eliminate, let's just say FTP, right?
Yeah.
And we eliminate for everybody. Okay, how is that going to affect the business? Like, let's be honest, there are tools out there that have, that HR and legal are still using that were made in the 80s, 90s, and they love it and it works. But it's like, how can we improve the business, but also secure it? Because this stuff is obsolete tech. We don't use it anymore and we can't even patch it anymore.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot with that too.
I think that's right. It's like, just how do we get the risks clearly articulated in the context of the business that we're navigating? And for some organizations, that means one management team. For some larger enterprises, that means you need to have, they'll have multiple divisions. They'll have lots of complex, different geographies, all of that. You actually, and I would love to get your perspective on this. You mentioned earlier the BISO. It's actually something I think is kind of an untapped superpower that organizations can leverage into. Could you actually speak a little bit more to that? Because I think that might be part of the solution here, is the deputization and of the CISO role. Because I think maybe, again, one of our problems might be that we have too much risk, too much in one person's shoulders. And it is separating out. It's like, how do I get really thoughtful, conscientious, business first, security, risk oriented people embedded in all these teams?
CISO role.
Yeah. Is that a word I can use?
I think the CISO has to get that Swiss Army knife out. And it's like, I need to hire the right people for the right organization. I mean, some people, I see a lot of organizations where they have multiple CISOs and they'll have like 10 or 15 of them and they report to one CISO. And I know that's created confusion. I've seen it with an organization because they're like, well, who do I go to?
Yes.
With other organizations, they've created a tree where it's like CISO, deputy CISO, and then you have the BISO separated for the business and they all go talk to the CISO. Some other companies, it's really what's good for the organization, what you want it to be, and very clear communication, being through a CISO or a deputy CISO or a BISO or any other executive. Because let's be honest, there'll be a new title somewhere, Chief Innovation Officer, down the line, Chief AI Officer. But at the end of the day, it's helping the CISO, sharing the wealth of everything that's on the plate and having that CISO delegate all that information, making sure we're doing everything the correct way. Because a CISO, they're going to be overburdened. Things are going to get missed. And it's not going to be their fault. It's just they have so much on their plate because the board and the organization has piled everything on them. And it's like, you are here to blame you. Go do it. Go fix it. And they can't do it all.
Yeah.
So it's just sharing the wealth. And
I think it's a great strategy. I think what you're describing there is, if we can take what you just described there of finding highly qualified, skilled leaders who can be integrated into the business units, you pair that with the risk management framework we were talking about earlier. Like, do you have the ability to detect risks, measure the same way, report it consistently, make sure you're operating your risk tolerance, like really focusing on those core, like using that as a tool to achieve that strategy or that collection of behaviors. I think sounds like a winning combination. I mean, at least it gives you the opportunity to not be caught flat-footed as your business is going through a rapid change.
Yeah, and giving bad information or, red line,
Yeah.
going to the board, it's okay.
Yeah.
As long as they know. And I know a lot of people are scared because they're like, oh, they're going
Yeah.
to get on me. It's like, look, this is the information. This is what I have. Yes, we're not looking good right now. However, give me this. It's an opportunity to be like, give me this and I can get us back in the green.
Bad news job. Like
Yeah.
that's the long and the short of it. It is a bad news job, and you've got to find an effective way to report that in the most appropriate way to get the response that you need to elicit. And if you can't do that, you probably can't be a very successful security leader. What are you, over the next few years, what are some of the problems that you're most excited to tackle?
AI.
And
Sorry,
that's
was
it.
that too much? It's really AI, but it's the global supply chain, how the shift in threats are changing. I do monitor that, and I've seen a shift of how threats within organizations has changed. It wasn't just that phishing campaign,
Right.
where it's just like an email, send me your money. Now it's calls, it's
Yes.
deep fakes, it's recordings, people taking, my voice or anybody else's voice and recreating it and calling in to try to get information and access. I mean, I know we're in Las Vegas, but I think it was 2 years ago, they had, I think it was MGM or one of the casinos got affected by a deep fake and they got compromised.
I was about to ask you, what are you scared of? I think we're all a little scared of the deep fake stuff. Like, I think we all think it's the Mike Tyson. Everyone knows what they're going to do until they get punched in the face.
Yep.
And I
Mhm.
think hearing a loved one or a friend who is going through a series of trauma, and my wife and I talked about this weekend, and we actually came up with a safe word, which is a nuts thing to even have to contemplate. But I need to remember it. But we have like a word that we use if there is a situation like this, which I think is a good piece of advice for everybody because it's going to happen.
I do that with my family as well. My grandma, who's 95, she got somebody calling saying it was my mother.
Yeah.
And it was like, no, that's not her.
Wow.
She was about to, send money. I'm
Yeah.
like, nope, don't send money. But she's like, it sounded just like her. I was
Yeah,
like, I
it's-
know.
Yeah.
So we implemented the same thing. We
Good.
use keyword, and I think a lot of families and I'm hoping organizations are starting to implement that, where it's just like, hey, I understand you say who you are, but I need to trust what you're saying is accurate.
Yeah, there you go. I got my
trust.
word in there. Yeah, I've been working with some startups on this space, and we're looking at like, how do you take the privileged processes out of band and have ID, like how do you have biometric verification in the setup process such that when it comes time to the wire transfer, when it comes time to take a sensitive action, you have a separate authorization system where you're doing a one of many or a one of one approval system, but you had to set that up well before, right? Kind of your idea there of the safe words and stuff.
I feel like I'm gonna break your heart. Biometrics is also not secure. Yeah, it's in trouble too because I mean we've all seen the 007 movie,
Right,
so
right.
let's be honest. It's not hard to do a fingerprint. It's not hard to do facial recognition. I mean, we have the deep fakes. Your eye retina. I don't know where we are there, but I'm willing to bet we'll probably see something there where they can duplicate eye retina.
All right, I give up. Right. Well, I think we're gonna have to call it there. Like thank you so much, Olivia. I really appreciate the conversation and the time that you've given us today. So you are the founder of Wolfbite Technology and the vice president of the chapter Global Council of Responsible AI, probably one of the most important institutions that's really driving, as you mentioned, setting the standard for ethics in AI. So you have over 20 years of experience in cybersecurity. You started with malware analysis and forensics, which I think is amazing because that's where I came from. I love that space. Anyone who's willing to crack open the hood of a compiled binary deserves a lot of respect. So anyone who's interested, we can follow you on LinkedIn for more of your thoughts on that. And thank you again for your time. We really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for this opportunity. It was amazing. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Olivia.